Hi folks, I just wanted to record this video kind of off the cuff, not really do a whole lot of prep, because I feel as though the thing that I'm talking about today has to do with movie YouTubers discovering Godzilla for the first time, and I put about as much prep and research into this video as they are. So, it's been a bit of a bad week for pop culture YouTubers finding Godzilla and releasing videos about how Godzilla is apparently a problematic franchise in terms of quality. We had Dr. Skipper's video, which I've already discussed pretty much thoroughly. But now there's this new video that's come out by a channel called Nerdstalgic. And the video is like, okay. There are only a couple of moments where it's like, are we sure about that?
This year, Toho releases Godzilla -1, a period piece that takes place right before the original film and follows a...
Okay, so like, yeah, -1 doesn't take place before the first film. It's its own continuity. As someone from the general audience coming into Godzilla -1, I could totally understand why you might think this. -1 means takes place before 0 or before the first one, right? And the movie ends with Godzilla regenerating again. So, maybe it becomes the monster from the 1954 movie. These things can be researched, though. Like, if you're going to make a video, if you're going to go through all this effort, you should make sure that your facts are right. The next part that people are finding issue with wasn't even me that figured it out, so I'll swap over to the Twitter user that pointed it out to give them, proper shout out. But it had to do with this part.
Both of these recent films have been fueled by authorial visions and genuine attempts at saying something through the metaphorical language of monster movies. But not all Toho Godzilla movies are like this. Many of the films aspired to do nothing more than to bash the cinematic equivalent of action figures together for 2 hours. And there's a beauty in that simplicity.
So what the person in the video has done is they've presented the footage from King Kong versus Godzilla while saying that all they're trying to do is bash two action figures on screen together. And the Twitter user has pointed out that King Kong vs. Godzilla was actually one of the more clever satires in the film's history. Satire like Shin Godzilla, which is mentioned at the front of that clip. And so I didn't actually know about this. I never knew about King Kong vs. Godzilla being a satire. So what I decided to do was research it. And I have this book over here that my dad gave me for Christmas, which is a fantastic book. And here is what it had to say about King Kong vs. Godzilla. But King Kong vs. Godzilla would be far from their previous films' sober reflections on the atomic age and humanity's endless cycle of violence. Instead, Honda would choose to make a lighthearted satire of the Japanese television industry while squaring off two of cinema's most iconic giant monsters in the fight to end all fights. The person making the video doesn't outright tell you that King Kong vs. Godzilla was nothing else, nothing more than eye candy. And you could probably say that something like that for Godzilla vs. Kong, the 2021 film. But again, it took me virtually no time to discover that that movie specifically had a message. It was mocking the television industry. Am I saying that I expect you to buy like a $30 US book to do your research? Well, I think that you could afford it, personally. If we just take a look at the views on this video, we've got 41,000 views on a channel that's got 1.36 million subscribers. And I know that YouTube is currently paying out an average ad rate of about $7 per 1,000 views. So 7 times 41, $287. You could spend 40 of those dollars to buy a book. You could do it. Oh, bonus points. YouTube pays more ad revenue if your video is 8 minutes or longer. And this video clocks in at 8 minutes and 2 seconds. I'm not going to say anything about that. I am just going to leave you with the information and let you come to your own conclusion. So why am I doing this, right? Like, why am I going in on these folks? There were a couple of commenters that were saying like, oh, can't you just leave them alone? Like, why do you have to make videos like the others? All saying the same thing. Which, first of all, I don't know if anybody else talked about the potential of Skipper's video being made with AI. I talked about using my experience with AI, and I used examples on screen. So if someone else did that, cool. I'd love to talk to them. But the thing is, I don't feel as though these videos are approaching the franchise in good faith. That's fundamentally my issue. Nerdstalgic is okay. Dr. Skipper's was not in good faith. He's issued an apology on Twitter, not on the video. I think he could have done like a pinned comment or something. Actually, let me make sure that I'm right in that. This video so much. I'm so tired of looking at it. Yeah, so the pinned comment is, what is your favorite Godzilla movie? And he does nothing to apologize for the misinformation or lack of research that he did. So, how sorry is he? Well, 130,000 views, $7 per thousand views. He's made almost $1,000 on this video. You know, can't be that sorry, I don't think. But anyway, back to it. Why am I going in on these folks? They're not approaching it in good faith. You know, it's like -1 somehow penetrated the casual audience, and so people are now interested in learning more about what Godzilla has to offer. And then you have these folks that come in and they make their YouTube videos with their clickbaity titles like, "Oh, Godzilla's problematic. Godzilla doesn't work. Da 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 da." And you know, we know they're doing it for the views. I mean, there's no other reason to do it. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, the Nerdstalgic video was originally called "The Big Green Problem with Godzilla," before it switched over to. Actually, let me switch my camera over. So it used to be called "The Big Green Problem with Godzilla," and now if you click on it, it says, "Is there a problem with Godzilla?" Oh, so maybe he looked at the Dr. Skipper video and just decided, you know, let's try to avoid that if we can. But then I guess my question is, who are these videos for? They're not for the Godzilla fan base, because the Godzilla fan base understands this topic better than you do, by far, by far. Is this targeted at the casual audience who has discovered -1, is now looking to see what else Godzilla's about? And so you're putting out these videos basically telling them, don't, right? Like, go watch Shin Godzilla, go watch the original 1954, and then after that, like, don't watch anything else. I take issue with that, man. I don't enjoy that. When you've clearly not done your research, when you show that you are part of this general audience that you're making videos for, do you know what the biggest indicator for knowing that you're not going to represent this topic well is? This franchise won the Guinness World Record for longest running film franchise. At this point, it's 70 years old. You know, Dr. Skipper, Nerdstalgic, assuming. Godzilla is a franchise that has existed well before you, well before me, and it will exist well after us. So to say that Godzilla is problematic or that there are bad movies, all this stuff, the franchise has persevered despite all that. And part of that is because Godzilla, it is such a malleable property, right? Like, you can make that character represent so many different things. For -1, he was survivor's guilt and PTSD. He was the embodiment of those things. In Shin Godzilla, they used him to make a satire of the Fukushima Daiichi incident, which, again, I will preach, that was a masterclass in writing satire. I've studied the Fukushima disaster. I've been to the nuclear plant that exploded. I spent a day there with the workers. I know that incident pretty damn well, more so than I would venture like the average Godzilla viewer. That movie is so much better than people give credit for. And yet that the way that Godzilla is utilized in that movie is very, very unique, I would say. Very unique. I'm not going to say it's completely different to anything else that comes in the franchise, but it's an example of like everyone reacting around the monster. And that's the point, right? Like, Godzilla in the original one was a nuclear allegory. In -1, he was the embodiment of trauma. In Shin Godzilla, he was pretty much a device for the government to react or be unable to react to. But so Godzilla is a malleable character. Like, you can do so many different things with him. And with the kaiju genre in general. Like, you can look at what the original King Kong or Peter Jackson's King Kong stood for, because they were very similar in nature. You know, Kong Skull Island, I've been thinking about a lot recently, and how, you know, it might be somewhat of an allegory of it could be considered, I think, a coming of age film, right? Of like being forced into a cruel world where you don't have your family to be there for you. You know, I haven't these are half-baked thoughts with KaijuCanuck. I haven't thought about it enough that I'm confident talking about it and making a video on it. But that's the point, right? Like, you can do so much with these films, and the franchise has done so much with these films. So for folks to come in and keep saying, like, there's a problem with Godzilla, at least be genuine in some of the problems that the franchise has. Don't point out the nature of the films and its history and say, yeah, these films don't work. Like, outright just don't work. When you're wrong. You are demonstrably wrong. If you want to point out some of the problems, point out like some of the things like in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in 1991, where the one character alludes to the fact that Japan becomes a super country and starts buying other countries like Africa. Like, that is kind of a messed up thing to include in a movie. Maybe we can talk about that. There was one more moment in the video that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's not Zuko.
Legendary has no faith in its audience. They have no desire to attempt anything other than to make money.
So, like, if you're going to use wanting to make money as a disqualifier, the vast majority of Hollywood is just taken off the block, right? Like if you want, you know, artful storytelling, you don't go to Hollywood. You go to independent filmmakers. You go to things like the Toronto International Film Festival, you know, Canada represent. So, first of all, that's it. Sure. We'll give you that one. That Legendary would very much like to make money. But in the same breath, you're saying that Legendary has no faith in its audience and they have no real vested interest in making the movie. I fundamentally don't believe that the team making these movies don't care about them, right? Like, you listen to people talk about what they want to do with the films, how they want to pay homage to those Showa roots, or, you know, they want to be able to tell... They want to be able to use Kong's facial expressions to tell a story because he can't communicate otherwise. People are clearly putting thought into making these movies. Whether you like the execution or not is totally up to you, right? I've said it before and I will say it again. If you don't like the MonsterVerse, I'm cool with that, man. You don't have to like it. I'm so happy that we live in a time where there's so many different things out there that we can all enjoy. I don't remember exactly when in the video, but he talks about like the pink Godzilla being kind of outlandish and silly. And, like, that's just funny to me. Surely Toho would never do anything outlandish or silly, right? In 2023? No, Toho would never do anything so outlandish and silly. Look, as much as anyone, I would love for Godzilla to become, like, a household thing that people talk about casually, right? Like, I would love for my colleagues to be like, wow, I'm hoping to stay and watch a movie. You have any recommendations? Like, oh, yeah, like Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack 2001. Great movie. Right? Like, I would love for that to be a thing. I've gone the better half of my life without being able to talk to anyone about Godzilla and how much I love this franchise. So I have as much of a vested interest in this topic being picked up by the big movie YouTubers. I just need it to be done with care, dude. Like, stop making these disingenuous videos, misrepresenting facts. You've got the longest running cinematic franchise in history that is being made on the other side of the world for the most part. And you think that in your almost non-existent research, you're going to be able to handle that topic with grace. Some folks think that the community went too hard in on Dr. Skipper, and it seems like some folks are starting to catch on to Nerdstalgic's video. But we just want these topics to be handled with care. There's a big old kaiju community that's willing to work with you. You have questions, you can just talk to us. There's books, there's online research, there's so many resources you can find, and there's so much to be unpacked. So to really just go in on Godzilla is a problematic franchise or whatever, it's just disingenuous. It's not true. There are pieces where, you know, that they're worth discussing, like that whole, like, Japan wants to buy Africa line from King Ghidorah. But we don't want to have our stuff, like, slung through the mud, right? Like, we don't want to see the casual audience look at your videos and say, oh, I guess, you know, there's nothing else for me to discover after watching -1. There's a ton to watch after -1. So if there are any big channels out there that do intend to bring Godzilla to a wider audience, I would encourage you to do some research first and foremost. But I would also challenge you, instead of saying, here's why you shouldn't watch Godzilla or why Godzilla sucks, tell people why they should watch more Godzilla movies after -1 or after Shin Godzilla. Tell them how it's totally fine to like the MonsterVerse and maybe not like Toho stuff, because genres exist, right? Like, you would never say that after Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie, there should never be a cartoon Joker. You would never say that. It's just so stupid. So if you're not going to make a video saying why you should watch Godzilla, well, then maybe I'll do it my fucking self. By the way, I'm going on the Figure Mania show tonight with Luminous, Shinrabjira, Harold. You should come check it out. It'll be a fun time. I'll talk to you guys later.